I mean, every culture, like you said, has a written account or documented account of some sort of cataclysmic event that happened around the time that the Bible claims was the Great Deluge, right?
Yeah.
So you'd have to be kind of foolish to overlook not only like the evidence that we have geologically, archaeologically, but ancient written history evidence. And so, um, yeah, I mean, a lot stands out, Sean. I mean, this is the infamous Genesis 6, right, where we have the mischievry of the Watchers doing things that they shouldn't have done, that went against their orders, and it created iniquity in the earth to the point where the Father, you know, had to step in and say enough is enough. We have to do something here. So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this to me was actually one of the first chapters that led me into my what I call my great awakening to the truth of God's word. It was the Nephilim topic with the late great Rob Skiba and his research, as well as Chuck Misler, both late great. So I mean, this chapter to me is a important one because it reveals what kind of world we actually live in, right? Despite popular opinion about what our world actually is and where it comes from, how it was formed, this goes to show that there are different classifications of spirit beings and entities that kind of coincide within this great model that the Father has created, and we have these angelic spirit angels, our brothers above, who were tasked, if I'm not mistaken, Sean, in Jubilees, to come down to the earth to lead man into righteousness, to show them how to cultivate the earth and to live according to how they live above. And a group of them didn't take that command by the Father seriously. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, it led into the type of destruction that was necessary, as we'll read in chapters ahead. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think it's Jubilees chapter 10 that talks about how Noah's praying. He says, the watchers that you sent. And because originally I think it's Jubilees 10, 1 through 10, but those watcher angels that rebelled took wives, had offspring of the Nephilim, whom the ancient record spoke to as giants. And we're going to read about that in the companion passages as well. And it's interesting to see that it was such a reality for the world, for most of the world. So just like, all right, let me put it like this: for most of time, it was a reality that there were larger humans that were either rulers of the nations or were mighty feared warriors, and this is the origins of that. And it's amazing to me how modern academia has tried to hide that fact so fervently, because it's also just like the flood. The idea of these offspring of the Nephilim have been, and the idea of a giant human, basically. Even though I try to differentiate, there's a difference between pre-flood Nephilim and post-flood Nephilim, because the post-flood Nephilim didn't actually, or they weren't birthed as a result of angels, but
Yeah, no
just through
second
the
incursion.
manipulation of men.
Yeah.
But because that's actually what the text tells us, is that the angels in First Enoch, that tells us they taught mankind the secrets of heaven. They were striving to learn. So then that means mankind can replicate that action and continue doing it. And that's what has continued happening throughout all of history. So if you look at like the total time span of history, it's interesting to see just in the past couple hundred years, has the world fallen into this mass delusion that they believe they're created differently than an almighty creator God, and they believe they're created differently from the firmament model as described and believed by many cultures in the past. And they also have moved away from this idea of giants being on the earth, whereas those facts were accepted ideas by almost every culture for thousands of years up into the last couple hundred years in modern society. So it's like we're moving into this strange new era of thinking and believing that is shared by a lot of people, and all of it is directly related to an atheistic mindset to reject God. But it flies in the face of the grand scale of the totality, if you will, of what people commonly believed and understood to be truth.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, Darwinian evolution definitely struggles with this idea of there being, bigger humanoids back in antiquity. And so they have to completely discard that. They have to try to scrub any of the history books, any evidence, both archaeological and manuscript type evidence that would prove or point to the fact that there were massive individuals that had existed at one point on the earth. And so, yeah, I agree. The past couple hundred years has definitely been a grand deception put in place, and I think it's all culminating to the greatest deception that we're going to see in days ahead. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. So for the audience out there, if you're watching, if you're trying to use these portions as a study guide for you and your fellowship this weekend, I have a couple notes compiled here for the summary of chapter 6. The Watcher class angels that were sent to help mankind disobeyed their mission by taking wives of their own from among mankind, procreating and teaching mankind destructive behaviors. The offspring of those angels were called Nephilim and are the origins of unclean spirits. Now, Ken, we didn't get into that too much for the sake of time, but we have covered that in other videos. It's also found in the Book of Jubilees and Enoch. Also, the Almighty warns Noah of a coming destruction of the world by flood. And this is also in the Book of Enoch, where he has a vision of the flood happening, and it's very fascinating. Then Noah builds the ark that will save he and the 7 others from the flood.